This episode is brought to you by The Science of Scaling. And The Science of Scaling is a podcast that, honestly, you should check out.
Yeah, it's called The Science of Scaling, and it's all about how to scale a business successfully, whether it's how to find outside capital or what to look for in your very first sales hire.
It's a new show hosted by Mark Roberge. She's the best-selling author of The Sales Acceleration Formula. He's also a senior lecturer at Harvard Business School and the founding CRO of HubSpot.
One thing that Mark mentions in the show is whether your company is valued at $1 million, $10 million, $100 million, the failure rate is the same, which means we suck at scaling.
In each episode, you'll hear interviews with people like Kyle Parrish, the VP of Sales at Figma, and Kevin Egan, the head of sales at Atlassian.
I've checked out a few episodes of The Science of Scaling, and it's great. Like, for me, I run a company as a bootstrap company. We're not the kind of company that's raised capital, but even still, things like sales, that's super important, and it's the lifeblood of our company. So for me, it's definitely helpful to hear how other people have sort of, who have been there and done it before, how they're actually approaching scaling. So go on in your favorite podcast app, whatever it might be, and search for The Science of Scaling. That's The Science of Scaling. Check it out. I think you're really going to enjoy it. This episode of Rocketship.fm is sponsored by Industry, the Product Conference. This October, gather with hundreds of product managers and product leaders from all around the world for 2 days of keynote talks, challenging working sessions, interactive discussions, social events, and more. Or add a third day and take part in half-day workshops with some of today's top product management facilitators for workshops on leading your teams to innovation, product roadmaps, achieving product market fit, and more. This year's lineup may be the best yet, with keynote speakers including product legend Marty Kagan. He's the author of the book Inspired, which is considered by many to be the seminal book for product managers and product leaders. There's also product positioning expert and author of Obviously Awesome April Dunford, and product leaders from Figma, IDEO, Amplitude, and so many other places. Plus, if you use the code Rocketship, you'll save $100 off your pass. Visit industryconference.com/global for more details. Again, industryconference/global for more information, but pricing increases on the first of the month, so register soon to save.
So as many of you may know, I ventured out this year. I left my job as the chief product officer at Dribbble to start a brand new company, and that company is gigantic. No, really, that's the name. We're actually very small today, but we are the training institute of the future. And my goal is to help you master the new influential disciplines that are driving results within organizations. And we're starting with some absolutely incredible courses like product leadership taught by Ben Foster, the former CPO at WP, deconstructing leadership with Allison Go, formerly of Meta and Amazon. We have revolutionizing marketing with AI, which is taught by Marie Osipova, who is the chief marketing officer at Penny.ai, and an upcoming product management course, which is taught by my co-host, Mike Belcito, along with Anna Marie Clifton of Coinbase and Asana, and Victoria Kennedy, who worked at Axios and Huge, and is now running her own venture capital studio. It's not just video courses. We're combining video lectures with take-home assignments and exercises, and then small group mentorship to really help make this information indelible for you and to help level you up, and all at a cost that most companies' learning and development budget covers. So if you're interested, go to gigantic.is, that's gigantic.is, sign up for a course, and you can actually schedule a call with me, and I'll walk you through everything that you need to know. And if you enroll and let me know that you heard about this on Rocketship, I've got a special discount for you. So go to gigantic.is, sign up today, and start your journey upskilling your product, leadership, and marketing skills. I can't wait to see you there.
Welcome to the Rocketship podcast. I'm Michael Sacca.
I'm Joelle Steiniger.
And I'm Matt Goldman.
And we're having 20-minute talks with entrepreneurs teaching you how to launch your product into revenue.
Check out our book at howtobuildarocketship.com to reserve your launch discount and to download a free chapter.
Today we talked with Jason Cohen, founder and CTO of WP Engine. You'll learn why you shouldn't be afraid to make ambitious changes to your strategy or pricing, and what those enhancements may look like. You'll also learn a bit about the differences between raising money to grow your company and self-funding all the way. Michael couldn't make it today, so you'll have to deal with a full episode of just Joel and me.
Welcome to the Rocketship podcast. We're here with Jason Cohen, founder of WP Engine. And Jason, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Why don't you take us back and tell us a little bit how you got started with WP Engine and maybe even what you were working on before that?
Well, I have a long history, so probably can't get into all the stuff. WP Engine is my fourth startup. I've done bootstrap startups. I've raised money, and as a co-founder, as a single founder, in hardware and in software. Two of the companies have sold. All the companies made more than $1 million annual revenue while I was running them. I'm the CTO and founder of WP Engine today. We have about 140 employees and growing fast. And so this is one of those raise money and grow fast sort of companies. And so I've done a lot of different things. But even though I'm currently in a company in which we decide to raise money and so forth, I'm also extremely partial to bootstrap companies as well. I think they don't get a fair shake in the world, and especially in the sort of online tech world, where if you're not valued at $1 billion, regardless of revenue, then you're nothing. And I don't like that sort of attitude. And so although there's nothing wrong with that, also, I feel like the other side maybe doesn't get a fair shake or any respect. But I do, and I've built those companies too, and I love them equally. So I just like talking about all kinds of companies. So
tell us a little bit about the early days, more like the time when you realized that it was time to transition towards looking for funding. What indicators did you have that you knew you should start pursuing a different path with WP Engine?
Yeah, WP Engine was bootstrapped for 18 months, and we got profitable twice in that period of time. And so it was clear that it was a profitable business model, and it was clear that we could continue bootstrapping and build that up. But in a funny way, it's because it works so well bootstrapped that it's actually a good question to ask, should you raise money? Because clearly the answer is you don't have to. And anytime they're making a big decision or looking at a deal or looking to sell the company or raise money or anything that's sort of a large deal that requires negotiation, the best position to be in is that you don't need it, that you really are okay walking away without it. Because then, of course, you can get the best possible deal, and you can still walk away if you don't want it. But that way, at least you explore an option that can be a good option. So in our case, it was, it's hard to get traction at a company. It's hard to find customers. It's hard to keep them. It's hard to grow the rate at which you acquire customers. And so when you find a company in which it's not that it's easy, but that it sure is a heck of a lot easier than it should be, and that's an indication that you have a really good fit. And then you couple that with a sort of obviously large market, and you say, okay, that's the kind of company which could raise money. So the question is, do you want to? And at this point in my life, I'd had a kid. I actually was a stay-at-home dad for a year before starting WP Engine, and so with a family and having had some success in bootstrap startups before, it was just a personal decision for me to say, hey, I think this one could be really big and really impactful, and not just in changing the world in sort of the sense that making everyone in America put their nose in my mobile app or some kind of egotistical change the world, but rather, we could create a lot of good jobs. We could actually do something good for the world and consumers, and this is a company that could generate a lot of wealth for a lot of people, and that's interesting. And then, so just kind of where I was and what I wanted to achieve, and the kind of project I wanted to work on, it made sense for me. And again, because we already had success as a bootstrap company, we could do that on good terms, in terms of giving up ownership, giving up control, et cetera, et cetera. And so it really all made sense for us. But obviously, those are all very personal calls, whether you raise money or not. What kind of company you want to build and what path to pick is a personal choice.
So something that I'm curious about, you see a lot of people on the bootstrap side really looking down on the funded side and vice versa. And it seems like nobody really notices the area in between, which I think exists. Did you notice a big impact on your lifestyle when you took the funding? Or were you able to still maintain your family life, vacations, et cetera?
We weren't doing vacation. You don't get vacations when you bootstrap. I don't know where you got that idea. No, it didn't. It doesn't change the lifestyle. I mean, either way, you have a ton of work to go do. It's just a different sort of goal and a different sort of work that you're trying to do. In a bootstrap case, you're trying to be profitable because you have to be. And so the company needs to be designed to be profitable. And of course, you want to grow, but you can grow only as fast as possible while still being profitable. Also, a lot of bootstrappers have other constraints they put on themselves on purpose. So for example, you have a lot of folks who say, I never want to have to manage an employee. That sounds horrible. So then the question is, how big and profitable can I be without adding a person? So what does that mean in terms of the type of product that matches that sort of choice? The kind of customer service that may or may not need to exist, the way the business model may work, and so on. Everything is around that. So these goals are not right or wrong. What is wrong is when you have one goal or one thing would make you happy, but instead you do behaviors or do actions that are along a different goal. Or if you don't decide the goal, and so you sort of do a little bit of everything and therefore nothing particularly well, those are wrong choices, right? But picking which path you want, there's not a wrong choice. And I agree, people look down on it, but don't people do that about all things they believe? Whichever side of the aisle you vote for, you look down on the other side, and religion. And I mean, you can go on and on about things that people feel strongly about that have to do with life and value are often different.
Yeah. So something that I really enjoyed was being at MicroConf last year. You gave a talk all about pricing. I'm forgetting the tagline of it. Do you recall? We can link to the video, but it was about building a
bootstrap company.
Yeah, building a bootstrap company and using annual signups with a discount and cutting out your trial and a few other aspects that set you up to really have unlimited marketing budget where you could grow at a much faster rate. Could you talk a little bit about the highlights of that?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things together in there. So again, if you're bootstrapping and so you're solving for cash flow, it's easy to think that you're solving just for profit, and you are, but you're really solving for cash flow. Meaning if you had less profit overall, but you had a lot more money to spend up front and to invest in the company, to buy marketing, to make mistakes in those things and still survive, that's very valuable. And so $40,000 that you make over a year is not as valuable as $20,000 or $30,000 that you get in 1 month that you can then go deploy in any way that is useful to the business. And so that's all the argument for annual prepays for recurring revenue companies. So in other words, if you normally charge $100 a month, maybe for $1,000, so therefore for a discount, you could get that service for a year. So by giving the customer a little discount but getting all that cash up front is huge for a bootstrap company, because you can immediately deploy that money to marketing for new customers, for design for the homepage, even just paying your own salary and sort of making that work and staying ahead. In a funny way, it's almost like a pyramid scheme. In other words, I get all the money now, of course it has to last me. Then again, I can use that money to get even more customers. And so in that sense, I can use the money today to get more money today, and so on. But that, of course, does work because in the end, it is recurring revenue. And that small discount for the time shift is worth it. So that's the annual discount. And what you were talking about a so-called infinite marketing budget comes about when you can get a large percentage of your customers, like a quarter of them, to choose the annual route. So if you think about the math, if a quarter of your signups choose an annual route, even with a discount, that still means for that quarter, you get, say, 9 or 10 months worth of revenue to this month. And even if that's just a quarter of the signups, that still means you'd make three times the cash this month than you would otherwise. And that's an absolute huge shift. For a lot of people, that means they can quit their day job and focus completely on the business, which is often one of the turning points of the business, to be able to have that focus, and so on. So So it doesn't even take that many people to elect that in order to make a huge difference. And then if your payback period in terms of marketing spend, so that is if I spend $100 to acquire a customer that gives me $25 a month, then I pay back that marketing expense in 4 months. And after that is when I really start making money. So you say 4 months is the payback period. Well, for an annual customer, as long as the payback period is less than, say, 6 months, 9 months, something in that area, then you literally make the cash back this month. You make more cash than you spent in terms of cash flow. And in that sense, in a cash sense, you're still positive on that customer right now, even though you had to spend money to get them. And that is another powerful thing, and that's what you were alluding to when you said infinite marketing budget. Because if it's true, from a cash basis, you can you can do that as much as you want. And of course, there's other constraints around how many customers can you get, and can you get reasonably efficiently, and can you support? I mean, there's other constraints around getting customers. But what annual, if you're good at getting a reasonable number of people to pick annual prepays, is from a cash flow basis, your marketing budget isn't constrained, and that's pretty amazing. Because obviously, getting customers probably the hardest thing for any small company. Period. Being able to pay to get them is one of the ways to get around that, of course. But then you run into the cash flow problem, the catch-22. Well, I don't have the money to pay to get customers until I have customers that fund it. An annual prepaid gets you around that catch-22, and so it's really, really worth trying to make that happen. So another trick, for example, to get people to do that is when you work with other folks, like say affiliates or review sites or bloggers, where you're going to give them, say, a coupon for their readers as part of the incentive. That coupon, for example, maybe only works on annual plans. And that way, you'll give a discount, you'll do an incentive, but only if it comes in the form of an annual prepay that gets you the rest of those benefits. And suddenly, you can imagine some pretty steep discounts and coupons there because it's worth it. There's always some value in just having customers. In other words, two companies that are absolutely identical, and one has 1,000 customers and one has 100. One with 1,000 customers has a lot of built-in advantages. There's a lot more customer feedback you're going to get. You'll have a lot more insight, therefore, into the base. To whatever extent word of mouth is happening, and of course, if it's viral, then good for you. But most companies aren't. But there is word of mouth. Many companies have that. And of course, the more customers you have, period, the more word of mouth can work. And those word of mouth customers you get typically are very low cost to acquire and often stay a long time because it came in a happy way. And so again, this all reinforces this argument that doing annual prepay to fix the cash flow problem, but then being more generous on coupons and affiliates and stuff to make it happen, even if on those particular customers you're not terribly profitable, is worth it just because having a mass of customers is in fact valuable.
Hey guys, hope you're enjoying the episode. I wanted to take a minute to thank Rocketship for sponsoring the show. Rocketship makes continuous deployment simple and easy, and we've actually been ecstatic customers of theirs for a very long time. If you'd like to see how we use Rocketship to deploy our product Hookfeed, go watch the short video we put together at howtobuildarocketship.com/Rocketship. Enjoy the rest of the episode. And that's really powerful that looking at for a bootstrapper with just a handful of customers paying annually each month, they can really quit their job sooner. So for a new product, what have you seen work or increase that rate of annual signups for WP Engine that people with a new product that people may not necessarily trust? What can they do to increase trust and push people towards the annual plan?
Well, the obvious one is allowing people to cancel the annual plan. And the kind of typical way to allow that is to say, if you cancel the annual, we'll refund you in a prorated sense, but it's as if you were paying monthly the whole time. And what that does is it undoes the discount that you would have otherwise gotten. And so sure, you prorate and sure you refund, and that sucks, but you actually made more cash on balance because they lose that discount rate when they do that. That's the typical way where the customer feels like they're not getting screwed, and therefore they can take that risk knowing they can undo. And the other thing is to just offer a money back guarantee at first. There has to be some time limit, obviously, but the fact is, if you're going to have good customer service, you're going to do that anyway. Like if someone had a really bad experience, says, this sucks from top to bottom, and I know I'm 45 days old and paid you twice, but you should refund my money because I had a terrible experience. Like if you care at all about customer service, you're going to just do that. It'll placate the customer. It's not that much money anyway. It's not worth keeping the $40 or whatever and then having someone really, really pissed off. And in fact, I a lot of times in my career, I've done that with someone and they've returned. They've come back at a later date when either our product was better or they were in a different position in which our product was a fit, or they even referred people. I remember early at Smart Bear, my last company, there was a guy from I won't name the company, but a very large public company, and he bought one thing on his credit card and wanted a refund, and I did. And later on, he must have referred a dozen people to us over the years, just because he was like, yeah, look, just try it. Like they're fair people. They, if it didn't work for me, but they're fair people, so give them a shake. So it doesn't pay to keep the $40 and then lose out on that. So you're gonna do that anyway if you have a reasonable customer service. So you might as well get the social credit for it and say right there, 60-day money back guarantee or something like that, and get the credit for what you're going to do anyway. And that also, of course, makes it easier for someone to sign up knowing they can undo. And you say, how do you build trust immediately? You don't. The definition of trust is something that is earned over time. You can get benefit of the doubt immediately. You can get, and you can earn benefit of doubt by things like saying there's no lock-in, there's no contract, you can always escape from this. And so give me the benefit of the doubt because if it's wrong, you can leave. That's good. That isn't trust either, right? Trust is what happens when you are your word over and over again, whether that's in what the product will do for someone or how customer service will handle issues and so on. And so that's your challenge. Is to earn trust over time, but remove barriers and earn benefit of the doubt immediately.
This episode is supported by the AWS Insiders podcast. AWS Insiders is a fast-paced, entertaining, and insightful look behind the scenes of AWS and cloud computing. Hosts Raul Submaranian and Hillary Doyle dig into the current state and the future of AWS by talking with people and companies that know it best. It's a show that's full of opinions, takeaways, and untold stories about the challenges, innovations, and mind-blowing promise of cloud computing. I checked out AWS Insiders, and look, it is a fantastic show, and it's perfect for anyone in tech who's looking for some of those behind-the-scenes stories, for some reassurance that, things are a little nuts everywhere, and everyone is struggling with a lot of the same problems. The first episode of Season 2 is all about filling the cloud talent gap, and it's an interesting discussion on what do we do to help to staff up internally. What are some of the challenges that companies are facing? Search for AWS Insiders in your podcast player. We'll also include a link in the show notes. Thank you to AWS Insiders for their support. This episode is brought to you by Miro. So when I was at Dribbble, over the 6 years, there was one tool that we would always use when we were doing cross-team collaboration. Whenever the collaboration started to get complex, we would bring in Miro. It made it incredibly easy to align stakeholders across regions and time zones and definitely teams with ease. And we were able to do all of that while being a completely remote team. It also has integrations into Jira, Azure, Rally, a lot of the tools that you're using already for product management and engineering. So you can import tasks from them as native cards, and it helps you see the big picture. It also helps stakeholders to understand what work needs to be done. It was incredibly valuable. And then they even have an estimation app that gives you a clear understanding of the work scope, lets you identify gaps, and then it has the ability for you to set clear expectations for delivery, especially when you're working across functions. So your first 3 Miro boards are free forever when you sign up today. Go to Miro.com/podcast. That's Miro.com/podcast.
Right. So you know better than anyone. I mean, you've run 4 companies. There's no silver bullet to hitting that, product market fit, hitting your growth stride and all that. pricing is certainly one of the things people struggle with the most. But what do you really see, both from the bootstrapper side, but also even now on the funded side? What do you see as struggles that kind of tend to pop up time and time again?
Well, everyone has the same problems. Probably the hardest thing is to find customers to buy and stay. And most people can code if they do a startup. And the design, I don't think matters as much as a lot of people think. It can help, but the number of very successful companies with horrific design, they go on and on. So that doesn't seem like that's actually the big barrier. So it's finding customers and the business model, part of which is price, and part of which is how is it that you're earning money. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into the mechanics of your accounting. But obviously, there are companies that it doesn't matter how big they get; they still don't work. And so there's that, but it's distribution, meaning getting in front of customers that actually want what you have and are willing to pay for it is for sure the hardest thing.
Would you say that kind of your secret sauce in building one successful company after another is keeping your focus on kind of acquisition and retention and not as much on the things that tend to distract other people?
No, I think I'm susceptible to that too. I think a good mindset for it is if you are a software developer, you know that with a big project stretched out in front of you with lots of tasks to do, you know that there are some tasks where there's a lot of ambiguity or at least high risk of the timeline or whether you can even solve it. And the correct thing to do in software is to tackle those first, because otherwise the whole timeline is in jeopardy until you've tackled them anyway, which you're going to have to do eventually to solve the project. And so you sort of bite into those and try to understand them better and scope them and so on. And so the same thing needs to be done with the startup. The trouble is you don't want to do the stuff that's hard. It's unlike software where it could be fun to tackle the really hard, strange, ambiguous problem. In startups, the strange, ambiguous problem are all those human beings that are supposed to give you money if only you could get in front of them and then tell them what they want to hear and then at a price that they want to buy and get them to go through all those mechanics of actually signing up and then also staying if it's a recurring revenue business. That's the hard part, but it's also not nearly as fun, especially for engineers. It's pretty rough, and you have to deal with a lot of rejection and people saying you suck, more or less. I mean, even just someone hitting the homepage and leaving is kind of a little quiet, nah, not for me. And it's hard to sort of deal with that. And so people don't. They're like, well, I'll add another feature. But for most companies that have some product at all and a website, and you ask, what is the main problem with this company, or what is the thing preventing this company from being successful, or what is the thing that's preventing this person from quitting their day job, or what is the thing preventing this company from making $1 million a year? It's very rarely one more feature. Like that's almost never the answer. Or if only it was designed prettier is probably not it. It's probably it's probably finding enough people who are correct to sign up for it and them signing up and them staying is probably it. And so it's just that's hard to deal with, and opening up TextMate and banging out another feature, or opening up Photoshop and playing with the UX is easier. And so we do it instead of tackling the hard, sort of obvious problem that faces the company.
Yeah. So one final question that I have is, you've talked about doing a money-back guarantee instead of a trial before. And what I've always wondered is, I understand that would work good for a company where people know what they're going to get after they sign up. With hosting, they have a pretty good idea. They're going to be able to upload their files, deploy it, send it, or point a domain at it. They know what they're going to get. But with some other products, if the end value isn't clear, have you seen anything that would increase the viability of doing no trial in favor of a money-back guarantee?
Well, you can't take any rule like that and just blindly apply it to all startups. It's for sure idiosyncratic. There may be markets where people are simply used to a free trial, and so if you didn't have one, you just wouldn't be an option. And maybe the more consumer you get, the more that's true. Also, if your trial conversion rate is super high, then there you go. But if your conversion rate isn't super high, then maybe you're not benefiting a lot from having a trial anyway, and maybe you should skip it. I think it's also easy to say, well, that works for you, but not for me. But I tend to find that argument is never really a truism in business. It's always easy for someone to say, well, your business is different because it's hosting. Mine's different because it's a CRM, so people don't know what they're getting. But I think that's crap. I mean, people buy their homes without sleeping in them. That's pretty huge without a trial. Yeah. So, I don't think that's true. I think people said you couldn't do Zappos because you have to try them on first, but of course they figured out how to do that. And yes, you did buy them first, but you had a money-back guarantee. And so actually you can do that in shoes, even though everyone says you have to try shoes on first. No, you don't. And Warby Parker actually is a free trial with the glasses, but they charge you if you don't send them back. So that sounds fine, but whenever I hear but it wouldn't work for me because it's usually not really an argument. You just don't want to try it. And that's not to say that you're not right sometimes. I agree. There's definitely products and markets where a free trial is better and charging up front would not be better. Of course I agree, but I don't agree with coming to that conclusion on the basis of somehow my product's magically different than yours, and so it doesn't work that way. I think I don't agree people understand what they're getting with us. They don't know whether their site will be faster or not. They don't know what it's going to look like. They don't know how to upload their files necessarily. So I could easily make the counter argument, not that I want to. It's really just to make the point that I don't think that's a useful argument. I think you need to look at what do customers expect. You could try it, of course, for a week and just to see what would happen. A lot of things you think are impossible, you can try for a week to see whether it is in fact impossible. I've told startups before who had $300 per year pricing. I said, just try for a week making that per month and see what happens. And the sign-up rate did not change at all. Same thing with doubling price. But that's not to say that would always be the case, right? It could go to zero. But the point is making those kinds of drastic, big attempts. If you're wrong, it's only a week, who cares? But if you're right that kind of price change or money-back guarantee or whatever kind of thing, if in fact that does work, and for whatever reason, who knows what the theory is around why the behavior of the customers is the way it is. But if in fact it's not what you think, it could be so massive to the business and business model, you sort of can't afford not to try and not ask the question, suspend your disbelief and all your internal justifications of why it couldn't possibly be, and just try things. Now, on a very small basis, swapping one headline for another, sure, whatever. But on these big things that could double revenue or double profits, why in the world would you start arguing why it's impossible? And why wouldn't you say, hold on, why don't I ask the reverse question? How can I build a business where, of course, they would pay double? Of course, they would pay 10x. And so it's actually an exercise I think is really healthy, regardless of what you do with the result, which is to say, what if I forced you to add a zero to all your prices today? You don't have a choice. You have to charge those prices 10 times more than you're charging now for every tier. What would you have to do? How would the business have to change? What would service look like? What would the onboarding experience look like? What would the design of the site look like? What would the About Us page say? What would the features have to be? What would your service policies about things like giving money back and that sort of thing, how would those have to change? What kinds of post-sale sort of account management would you want to do to retain that? And of course, you could afford to do it if the prices were that high. That's another factor. And you just ask all these open-ended questions around what would you have to do to justify that for anyone to do it. And then the result of this exercise is you say, well, then why don't you do a couple of those things regardless of the price, and then you're adding a ton more value, or at least perceived value. And by the way, maybe you should double or triple prices while you do those things, and maybe that will work because you just decided how to make that work. So I think those are the more interesting and certainly more valuable exercises and questions, asking not trying to justify why you couldn't possibly raise prices or such and such a business model is impossible, but rather ask, well, hey, how could I make it so that it would work, so that prices could be much higher, so the business model could be whatever is useful to you, whether that's recurring where today it's not recurring, or whether that's annual versus monthly, or whether it's just much higher price. Whatever it is, it's going to make the business more predictable and more valuable. Why not work towards that as your challenge rather than justifying why you can't charge money or you can't be expensive?
Yeah, that's incredibly helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, it's kind of like backcasting. if you're familiar with that, instead of just picking some price out there or some goal up ahead and putting your head down and working towards it, you actually work backwards and say, okay, what do I need to do to make the $10 plan worth $100? So I love that. It definitely makes me think differently about our own product.
Now it also changes other things. You can't just change price and then everything else stays the same.
Right.
You have a different kind of customer. But you're right. People who would ordinarily pay $10 a month, a lot of them will pay $100. Then again, some people that saw $10 a month and thought, "Oh, this is some crap," may actually pay $100. But it's different sorts of folks. And so marketing to them is different, and talking to them is different, selling to them is different, and their expectations around the product and the company and service is different. So it's not true that I'm being sort of flippant about changing prices, but that there's a reason why you have to go through and ask what all would be different, because it is different. It wouldn't be the same company, not just in what you would have to do, but in who you're signing up. And so that's all true. But again, I sort of submit. And again, as a small company, especially a bootstrap company, the last thing you want to have to do as a bootstrap company is get 1,000 or 10,000 customers before you're really profitable, because it's really hard, and almost no company ever gets that many customers ever. And so, if you charge a small amount of money, you have no choice but to try to get thousands of customers, and that's hard. Not impossible and all that, but it's very hard. And so, isn't it better to charge an average of $100 and have hundreds of customers and be able to quit your day job, instead of charging $10 a month but having to get thousands? And I don't care who you are, getting thousands of customers is hard. It takes a long time to do too. It'll be at it a long time to scrape your way up to 1,000 customers. Anyone that's done a company like you guys are right now, know, man, every customer is hard. Getting 2,000 kind of seems really, really infinitely far away, and it kind of is. So all the more reason to charge more, so that doesn't have to be the goal, or the short-term goal, that is.
You've done the bootstrap thing. You're doing the funding thing now. What do you wish you would have known maybe before you got into the funding side, or maybe any words of caution or wisdom on that route?
Well, we definitely did the right thing by doing it, and so on that side, it's fine. One thing we sort of hit pretty early on, like in the first 6 months after getting funded, is we didn't plan for success in every department. In other words, we started doing things like increasing marketing spend and going to events and things like that, spending money in that side of things. And of course, those things take time to develop and start paying off. And really nobody knows if and when they will, which marketing channels will work and which events will be the key ones. Like, nobody knows, right? So you just start doing that. But what we didn't do is similarly increase spend in engineering, in support, and so on. And so what happened is, for a while, that seemed really smart. We were trying different things to grow, and they weren't working yet, and we weren't wasting money. So that's good, except then suddenly it started working. And all of a sudden, our growth curve took a huge bend. We started taking off. But since we hadn't invested in all the other support mechanisms like customer service and engineering, we weren't ready for that. And so we started delivering very bad customer service and having trouble with the servers and all that kind of thing, because we hadn't done a similar investment in the other areas. So you can sort of summarize that as planning for success. That is, you should. The point of the money is to be successful, and so it's wrong to then continue to have that conservative mindset of only spending money when the problem arises, which is sort of the bootstrap mentality. And it has to be the bootstrap mentality. But rather, you have to look in the future and assume success, so that if success comes, you're ready to take advantage of it fully. And so instead, we went through this really tough period for maybe six months, trying to hire and then train while we're underwater and all that kind of stuff. It's really hard. And so, yes, that doing that burns money, but that's the whole point of the money, is to spend it against that, hedge against success. So that would have been wise for us to do.
And then, do you have any good resources on figuring out how much to raise if you are pursuing that?
Well, that's like asking what price should I charge.
Well, I mean, to help calculate based on.
No.
No.
I mean, if Snapchat is, if WhatsApp is $19 billion, then how do you value a company?
Mm-hmm.
If Instagram is only $1 billion, how do you value a company? If a company with no revenue raises an A round at $8 million, a company with real revenue and similar growth rate raises at $3 million, then how is it that you value a company? And so all that just tells you, not that it's impossible, but that there's not a generic answer like that. You can't take three numbers and multiply them and get your value.
Yeah, I guess I'm not asking so much about the value, but more so the right amount to where you're setting yourself up for success if you don't hit the goals that you need to where the company could run without raising more funding, worst case.
That's not the goal.
Yeah. So you're basically, or go ahead.
The goal is not to raise an A round so that you can become profitable. The goal is to raise an A round so that you can hit milestones so that you can raise your B round. Like once you start into the institutional money, the goal isn't profit. The goal is growth. The goal is to own the market. The goal is to become as much of a monopoly as you can within the law. That's the goal. And maximum shareholder value.
And what would you say towards
a fiduciary duty to do that? So profitability is the last thing you want, because profitability indicates that you're out of ideas for how to grow or invest or de-risk the business. Because if you had ideas of how to do those things, that's what you should be doing with that money. So it means you're out of ideas for how to spend that money against the company. Until, of course, you're very, very large and reaping that. Although even today, you can see that in, say, Amazon or Salesforce that is still, running at razor thin cash flows because they keep reinvesting into the business to grow it, and successfully so. So, no, that's not the goal, and there's no institutional investor who wants that to be the goal. Now, on the other hand, you don't want a completely broken business model. So, of course, there's going to be, and this depends on the business, what kinds of metrics you're looking at, but there's going to be metrics and ratios and things that are the goal. And some of them might be financial. And I do like a business, and we did this at WP Engine, I do like a business that tries to close the gap on profitability. That is, the goal isn't to become profitable, but you should be seeing some kinds of approaching profitability, or at least profitable when you ignore certain kinds of expenses that you're intentionally overburning on, and seeing that the rest of the expenses is getting more and more profitable. Like those kinds of things make a ton of sense because that's showing the business is coming together and the business model is working as expected. But no, you don't raise an A round with the goal of with the outcome of that being profitability. Not with an institute. You do that with angels maybe who are unsophisticated, but not with real investors.
And so, what would you say towards taking a bootstrap company that's profitable, raising an angel round to slingshot it to the next level, but not pursuing institutional?
Well, then you just tell whatever story you want, because you're just dealing with angel investors who have much. First of all, almost all of them will lose their money because they're not sophisticated about how they spend it, and that's sort of a well-known phenomenon. So they're not going to be too sophisticated on that. And at that point, you're dealing with individuals who are controlling their own funds, and so that is their own money. In that case, all you have to do is just convince them of whatever it is you're trying to do. If you want to stay independent forever, then I guess an interesting question is, how will you pay them back ever? Mm-hmm. So that's a good question. Assuming you can solve that question, then it's whatever you want. I mean, it's just human beings dealing with each other. Ideally, they're taken with your idea. If you're profitable and growing, then you've got all the proof you need that this is a real business, of course. And so the only question is, what do those angels personally want? See, it's easy to know what institutional investors want because they've already made the promise to their LPs. There's no choice. The model is set. There's a contract, literally, with their LPs about how they'll spend the money and why. So there's no doubt about what their incentives are and what they want from you and why. Like, it's literally written in stone. And so it's very easy to understand how an institutional investor figures things out. An angel is just the reverse. It's just a person doing whatever the heck they want. So, presuming you can solve the question of how would they ever make their money back, there you go. Although, I don't know, I think I've seen some angel deals where it isn't clear how they'll ever make their money back, and they don't care, right? So yeah. Even that maybe doesn't matter. It also depends on the angel. So if you raise from, from me as an angel, that's one thing. But if you raise, a lot of people raise from their dentist, or they raise from their from the ex-VP of sales of a telco company in Dallas who has just tons of money. And so why is that person investing, and what do they expect, and do they understand what investment is and what the product even is? Who knows, right? And so what are the rules? There aren't any. It's right, like it really depends on the person.
Yeah.
But I would argue, look, why would you do that? Like, if you're a bootstrap company and you're profitable and growing, why in the world would you want to involve anybody, especially dumb money, who won't ask good questions and won't help you build the company, and all they'll be is a pain in the butt? Like, why? I mean, okay, sure, you can get a little bit of extra money, but really, that's worth your life? You're, working with people that aren't helpful, or being indebted to someone, even if they don't technically have control. It doesn't matter. They still email you, and they're still a thing. They're still a force. Why do that when you have control? You have your bootstrap profitable company, just so you can grow a little faster. What do you care? Why in the world would you give up your freedom for that? So to me, like, I actually I don't understand the motivation there exactly. Conversely, if you said, look, everything's great for that, and so there's this one angel, we think that person will be incredibly helpful, they have a great reputation, they're going to put in $500,000 or $1 million or some kind of reasonable amount of money that will make a difference, and it's just one person, and we actually do think they'll help, and blah, blah, blah. I could kind of see that. You're sort of bringing on a financial partner, and you feel like that will help de-risk the company a bit and help achieve something, and that sounds like a fun adventure. I can get more. I can understand that. But again, like, this is why it's so personal and why it's hard to give general advice, because it's about, why are you raising this money? Maybe you don't want to run it forever, and this is part of a step to that. Maybe you're tired of running a slow growth one. You're like, I don't even care if I give up some power and have a board and all this. I don't even care, because I want to swing for the fences and screw it. That's fine, but then I might suggest institutional money, because they'll help you be successful there a lot more than angels will. But again, that's why you have to work, like you said, you have to backcast and say, what is it that you want? What is the point here? What's going to make you happy or fulfilled? What's the journey that you would like to attempt here? Does that match the company? And then how can your actions in terms of all these things match that, to increase the chance that you'll be successful in that particular path you want?
Yeah.
That's fantastic advice. I really appreciate that, Jason.
Sure.
Thank you so much for coming on. This has really been great. Can you tell everyone where we can keep up with you online?
Sure. I write at blog.asmartbear.com. And Smart Bear was the company I did before WP Engine. And my Twitter handle is the same, at @asmartbear.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Rocketship podcast. If you haven't yet, pop open iTunes and subscribe to be notified of future episodes. We have some really great ones lined up.
And while you're there, leave us a review. We really appreciate each and every one of them.
Hey, this is Mary Beth Lassiter. Are you craving a new podcast? I've got a recommendation. Check out Gravy, the James Beard award-winning podcast that shares stories of the changing American South, brought to you through the foods we eat. It's produced by the Southern Foodways Alliance and distributed by APT Podcast Studios. Listen to Gravy on your porch during happy hour to hear about the mystery of the missing Pappy Van Winkle bourbon. Don't miss out. Follow Gravy wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey guys, welcome to The Collective. I'm Brianne Helfrich, a 26-year-old bioethics PhD student and clothing brand CEO. Welcome to my podcast where we talk all things health and wellness, navigating your 20s, and becoming the best version of yourself. So, sit down, play that episode, and join the collective.